So, Shalom Aleichem and welcome to shiur this morning. Today's Chanukah. It's a very special day. And I want to dedicate this shiur to Schus of Henia, Chanukah, Henia Bast, brocho Dayan Levi Yitzchok Raskin. So, Rabbi Ephraim Potash asked me if I thought I'm going to have a week off because of Nittel. And then Rabbi Ephraim Potash asked me to give a shiur this morning. And so he asked me also to focus about some things about Chanukah, which is natural. I'd like to just also at this moment wish a poor shlema to Toiba Bas Bluma, that's Rabbi Ephraim's wife, to have a poor shlema. So let's go on to our first question. And that is, I got a call at the beginning of Chanukah, well, second day, that someone had forgotten to say שהחיינו the first night of Chanukah. So should they say שהחיינו the second night as they light the Menorah? This is, in Gemara, it talks about a person saying שהחיינו afilu bashuk. If a person didn't say שהחיינו at Kiddush, the night of Yom Tov, can say שהחיינו any time during Yom Tov. But that is true only for Yomim Tovim, as in Shalosh Regolim, etc. Shana Yom Kippur. Purim and Chanukah, the שהחיינו is not so much on the Zman as on the mitzvah. So we wouldn't say שהחיינו Chanukah and Purim in the middle of the street. It would be only associated with Kiyum HaMitzvah Sayoim, Megillah, or Hadlokas Neiris. And therefore, I had this day, sure, when the person asked me, I said, I have to check it out. And you could say, I mean, if the first time you had a peach in the new season, you say שהחיינו. If you ate a peach without שהחיינו, the second time a peach, you don't say שהחיינו. So after the שהחיינו for Neres Chanukah is similar to Pri Chodesh. But the halacha is clear not so. Here you have in Menorah Tofrishayim talks about the three brochos, and he says clearly, if you didn't say שהחיינו the first night, so then mevorich beleil sheni, you could say שהחיינו on the second night, or at a later stage when you remember. But it's only only bisman hadloka. Why
is the pastors only at the time?
Because the fact that he says Beleil Sheni, so it means Beleil Sheni by Hadloka.
When you remember.
Well, that he means remember at a later stage. But this is all being recorded, so let's keep it to a minimum, yeah? Let's move on. So here, the second question which we have about Chanukah, very, very common question. People go away to go in-laws, etc., and comes the night of Chanukah for supper. So I had such a shiur. And your man from Manchester, and he's a Baal Tshuva, and his parents invited the family to come for a meal during the night of Chanukah. I said the name leads is fictitious. Manchester, but could also be fictitious. It doesn't matter. So he has a shiur. Should he go to spend the evening with his parents? But you look in the Taz, it says that a person goes to visit friends on the night of Chanukah has to go home to light the Menorah at home. So what's the point of going to his parents? And they're the one who have to stay for supper, etc. So the pastors, you look in Shulchan Aruch, if you go to visit in locally, you have to go home to bench Chanukah late Gericht at home. And it seems to be quite common that people who, not local, but they, let's say from a half an hour drive or more, they will want to light Menorah by their host. And yesh al mal yismech. So here you have from the Sefer Piskei Teshuvos. Say, let's read his text. You got married children, and they're going to their parents a night of Chanukah. They're going to sleep over in Ishkeshayla. But there are those who say that even if they want to just go for supper and they want to eat and drink by their parents, and before benching licht, you're not allowed to eat. So here's a great chiddush, contrary to the general perception that they are allowed to have bench licht by the parents or whoever and have supper there and then come home. So who is the mechadish of this chiddush? So the Brisker Tshuvas is very, very much a in footnote 69, you see a reference to Kinyan Torah. Tshuvas Kinyan Torah, I think his name was Avram. His name was Horovitz. He was the Rov in Strasbourg for many years. So he writes that, let's read the Ha'ora here. Interesting Ha'ora. He says that the Taz and the Mogen Avram, when they say you have to go back home, that's when you are visiting on your own and your family are back home. But if you take your whole family and there's no one left at home, so he says, then there's no one at home. What's the point of you coming home to buy some Hanesh at home when everyone has already seen the Menorah at the where they're having supper? So then he says, since there's no one left at home, then you would be able to join in the Chanukah and light at your host for the night of Chanukah. It's a chiddush. I was very pleased to see this. Right, then Bichlal he goes further. Mishpocha, if they have, so let's read that inside. A family who are celebrating a Chanukah party in a hall or in a restaurant, the whole family are coming together. B'diavad, he has the word b'diavad at that party, because now it's the Mokem Ma'achilo. Now this is a very big chiddush lekula. That's what he said. The Ikki is talking about a house. That if the children, that was the main point was in the house. That's yeah. This is all being recorded, so I want to keep a minute. Right. So let's move on. Then someone asked me during the past week, what's the difference between why is it after Hallel on Chanukah, other than Rosh Chodesh, we say Kaddish, and why after Hallel on Rosh Chodesh do we say Kaddish Sholem? So what's the reason for the difference? So this Haklalu, that's what it's written that this is the klal, and here you have on the Kolboy, which is an anonymous. We don't know who the Machaber is. Later, when you've shown him, Acha Hallel, you say on Rosh Chodesh, you say Kaddish Sholem. V'chein b'chol yoim, say sheyesh bei korban musaf. You say so now we have another word for Kaddish Zuta. But why? It doesn't say why. What's the difference? Why is it that on Chanukah we say Chatzi Kaddish after Hallel, and why on a day that there is Musaf we'll say Kaddish Sholem? And the answer is that a simple klal, that there's no such thing as a Kaddish spontaneous without a hakdama. Kaddish has to be preceded by a tefillah of sorts. It's for a limud. So either you have Yom Mishnayos, Sholem. Let's say we start off mincha. So mincha is preceded by Kaddish. That Kaddish has to be preceded by a tefillah. So we say Ashrei. So you don't start off a Kaddish without anything preceded. That's why we have this whole problem on Rosh Chodesh. Because we put on Rabbeinu Tam's after Kriyas HaTorah, and then so held the Peilishe Elam, they will say a Kaddish after Ashrei Volatzin, and then they switch on Rabbeinu Tam's, and then suddenly someone brings the bang on the table and they start Shmonesrei. And we have they say Chatzi Kaddish, and they have a long heftig after the Chatzi Kaddish. Our meaning is not so. We do Kaddish before the Shmonesrei. Better the Shaila, can't start with a Kaddish without the Mizmer. So the Rebbe answers his letter to the Baruch Noah, and the Rebbe says he agrees to say a Mizmer before the Kaddish on Rosh Chodesh. But that's this principle that you can't make a Kaddish without a Mizbeh before. I just want to use this opportunity that people in Mosul comes to Kaddish Rabbanon. And the person who's saying Kaddish, the Rabbanon says the Mishnah is quietly. She's the Kaddish. It's not correct. Kaddish has to be after a limud barabim or after a tefillah. The start of a Kaddish allowed without having any communal tefillah or limud is nicht ausgehalten. I'll call upon him. This is the chesh that on Rosh Chodesh. So now on Rosh Chodesh that we're going to start with the Kaddish. So we need to have the Ashrei or Ashrei of Oletzion, Shabbos, Ashrei of Oletzion on Rosh Chodesh. We need to have the Ashrei of Oletzion as a hakdama for the Kaddish, because after the Kaddish without a tefillah. So the Ashrei is needed for the Kaddish before Musaf. Therefore, we say Kaddish Shol the Hallel. On a Chanukah, we don't need the Ashrei for a Kaddish Musaf because there is no Musaf. Therefore, the Ashrei is connected to Esther and Hallel and Kaddish. After Ashrei Oletzion, Kaddish Tiskabel is going to include going to come after the Ashrei of Oletzion. I hope that's clear enough. Whether the Ashrei is needed for the Musaf or the Ashrei is just a hemshech to Shachris. There's a fascinating letter of the Rebbe where he analyzes the difference between Rosh Chodesh. The Seder on Rosh Chodesh is we say Shir Shel Yom before Ashrei Oletzion, and there's this beer of the Rebbe. It's got to do with Seder Al Pi Kabbalah. You've got Ashrei Oletzion, Zelem Abriye, and Shir Shel Yom Yetzirah, and Keteiris. Kaveh is connected Elam Hoasiyah. It's Yerida Sa'elamis. Rosh Chodesh is different, and the Rebbe has a whole fascinating beer in Kabbalah and Halocho. So there are 3 pages in English. Kodesh is also in Shulchan Menachem. Let's move on. So now people are asking the question whether a woman is allowed to do Malacha on Chanukah after the half hour that the Menorahs are burning. So here first we have a line from Sefer HaMinhagim. So if you can see where I'm pointing to, Achar shiur zman hanal. Now in Chabad we have a chiddush, so instead of just 50 minutes, we have a minimum of 50 minutes, and that's got to do with the cheshbon of whether there's a machlokas when it says Misha Tishka Hacham. Does Misha Tishka mean from the beginning of Shkia or from the end of Shkia? So the Machal learns Misha Tishka from the end of Shkia. Half an hour is from the end of Shkia. In other words, from the end of Ben Hashmoshes. Whereas the Pri Chodosh says, no, Misha Tishka means from the beginning of Shkia. So we are Yotze both shittas. We light Misha Tishka just after the Shkia, but we allow that it should burn half an hour after Sof Shkia. From the beginning of Shkia to Sof Shkia, in other words, how long has Ben Hashmoshes? A minimum of about 20 minutes. And that's the cheshbon, as far as I understand, of the 50 minutes. Okay. Then it says in Sefer HaMinhagim, Achar shiur hanal, so we do Malacha Shlo Keneged Menorahs, and we go by Yom Rishon Shmini, which is another discussion. Now, Sefer HaMinhagim largely is the Rebbe's writing. It says the Rebbe will publish Minhagim in Kuntreisim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and whatever you have in Moshel in Megillah in Rishimas Eicha or the Tzemach Tzedek. So at the back there you got the Rishima of Ben HaMetzorim, and then that's the bulk of Sefer HaMinhagim is from or large Rebbe's Rishimas, and then Rabbi Gruner and Rabbi Greenglass Aleim HaSholem, they took those Rishimas and they put in a lot of other stuff, and that's the Sefer HaMinhagim. But the lotion of this Ha'ora is of Rebbe's lotion. Ba'asiyas Melocha neged haNeiros lo yocholti levar. Who's lo yocholti? The Rebbe is saying, I wasn't able to mevarer hachroas minak beis harav bepluktas hashulchan aruch veharashal. So about doing Melocha after doing Melocha in front of the Neiros, so the Rebbe is saying I wasn't able to be mevarer. What's minak beis harav? The machlokas the Shulchan Aruch and the Rashal. So to understand the Rebbe's Ha'ora, let's take a look at the lotion of the Shulchan Aruch. Then the lotion of the Rashal, or the quote of the Rashal. So in Shulchan Aruch, It says in Shulchan Aruch, Yochel lechaboiso leachas she'ovas man zeh, v'chein yochel lishtamish le'oiro leachas man zeh. After the half an hour, no kedusha. It says, yes, you can light a cigarette from it. You can do what you want. After half an hour, the Menorah has no kedusha. Avdem brings the Magen Avraham, but Ashal, B'shlei Meluria, Kosav, the English Tamish Lieda. No, the Menorah burns more than half an hour. The language of the Menorah is alight. It's still Neder Shel Mitzvah. Chabay is a short. You want to put it out, you can put it out. But so long as it's burning, it's still Menorah. Asher. Therefore, it's still now and Loisif Befrat L'Chitas Haramo. Ramo says that nowadays that we madlik bifnim, the time factor is not so important. In Gemara, you say you have half an hour after sunset. Mishatishka. Now we're lighting inside. So who are we lighting for? For the Bnei Abayis. So it doesn't matter a bit earlier. But earlier is a problem, but late is not a problem. Yeah, we just discussed this. If your wife is coming home from work 6 o'clock, you wait for her. Shalom Bayis. Are you missing out the halachic chilek man? But Shalom Bayis is more important than the hidur in hadlochis. Okay. Al kolponim is ebazei. The longer the lights are burning, it's kind of the mitzvah. Those are the Rebbe's shaila. Asiyas melocha neged hanedes. Therefore, half an hour has elapsed to do melocha in front of the candles. Afshanish, according to the Rashal, it's still hadlokas neder. It's still meneder. So you shouldn't be doing melocha. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you are allowed. Memela, that's the Rebbe's guidance. Shloike neged hanedes. Shloike neged hanedes. You can make you can do melocha in front of the nedes. Yeah, and in front of the nedes you shouldn't. This is also from the Piskei Teshuvos. So he writes, the union of women not doing malacha is this is part of their way of participating. The pale when there's a man about, so a woman will not light, the man will light. So how is she mishtatem in the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? By the not doing malacha, by not doing the laundry, not doing latkes is megmenyo, latkes, because that's lamed, like Yom Tiv, you have to make latkes. That malacha is not a problem, but the malacha which is not allowed on Yom Tiv, the women abstain from that, and that's they are participating in the halakas haneres. And therefore, so long as they are there, now then, how long do the neres burn? So Magen Avraham says the neres in shul burn till chatzos. It has a svara till chatzos, but it's nicht befasst so viel. Okay. An interesting question. Someone asked me, a man from New York, he asked me, saying brocho Me'in on Friday night by Minyan, and not in the shul, not in Mokin Kavua. So you read in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. So I answered him, Alter Rebbe kommt es nicht. So here we have in Simon Reish Samachez that the takono of brocho Me'in Zayin is dafkin a base Knesses Kavua, where people daven b'kviyas, but if it's just an ad hoc, they just made a minyan or something. So then one would not say the brocho Me'in Zayin. Then lower down we see that if you moshul, you have a yarid, you have a fair which goes on for a couple of weeks, and they have a set place. He could have said nowadays. He could have said holidays, but in Alter Rebbe's times, they didn't have holidays. And on a holiday resort, they have a mokin kavua l'tefillah for a few weeks. We had one answer from the Rebbe that when we were shluchim in Australia, so we were told a message through from Rabbi Halocho, Rabbi Chaim Gutnik, that during Ben Azmanim we should be as much as possible. The shluchim should be in the zal. But the kitzur was, the last point was, wie the Mashalech nimmt nicht kein vacation, sollen die Shluchim echt nicht nehmen kein vacation. So, so if you have a kavua by Yerid, so they asked me show you. Then he says further, If there's a place where they make a brocho mein sheva, even just mamish ad hoc, ein limchos. That's as much as it goes. So ein limchos doesn't mean that it's okay. It means ein limchos, yeah? It's like having goyish butter. Is ein limchos b'yad mekil. That's the lashon of the Shekhinah. So nevertheless, it looks like that al pi Kabbalah, this has been a lot of discussion. It looks like al pi Kabbalah, there's no difference, and one should be saying brocho mein sheva even in a ad hoc minyan. So I mentioned this on Friday night. So Rabbi Yidel Weiss told me that in the Das Torah, the Marsham, Brejana Rov, he brings to say it. Even when there's that. So I looked this up. You can see on the screen. I want to see who the Brejana Rov brings it from. Yeah, you ready? Ein b'sefer kanei ha-Menorah, shekosa b'shem kanei so'ari, the gam b'chol minyan, filo eina kavua yesh li omrei. So we've got the sefer kanei ha-Menorah, who the Brejana Rov, who was in Galicia about 50 years ago probably. He was mamash for the Gresta Post in Galicia, and he quotes from a sefer kanei ha-Menorah, b'shem ari, that even in not minyan kavua you should say it. No, Baruch Hashem, now I got access to the Sefer Menorah HaTorah. Kanei HaMenorah is within the Sefer Menorah HaTorah. And this is on the Shulchan Aruch, where he writes, Bebeis Chasanim, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Bebeis Chasanim, that you shouldn't say brocho mein sheva. Zelam da achroinim, lemin shein kavua de ein Arizal, achi of the Omri b'chol min. Okay. Now, here we have, although the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch said the chayr not to say it, we have sources that al Kabbalah, Arizal, you should say it. Shaila Zazay. I once read that the Brejana once got a letter, I think from the Chelkas Yoyov, and the Chelkas Yoyov writes to him, if you would learn Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, you'd have a whole new world. So you look in the Brejana Rov, he doesn't bring the Alter Rebbe very much. It was later, afterwards, the Brejana Rov acknowledges Takis, it was a whole new world. So the fact that Brejana Rov writes to say it, I mean, he brings it from the other. But then what is more significant to me is he brings it from this Menorah HaTorah, with this Kanei HaMenorah. As I say, same safe. Now I just want to, if I can scroll down, for those who are interested in history, this Sefer Menorah HaTorah is written by a Talmud of the Mizritche Maggid. And he passed away in Tovkuf Memvov. It's not such a well-known Sefer. I don't have the Sefer myself, but I know of it. What I've read is that he is one of the major chidushim of the Alter Rebbe, Megzogen, in Halocho, is to paskin like the Goinim rather than like Rabbeinu Tam. In Zman of Shkia, yeah, Kabbalah Shabbos, Alter Rebbe paskins like the Goinim, like Rabbeinu. Good, the Vilna Gaon also paskins. He was earlier than the Alter Rebbe, in age, he was older. But the Sefer Menorah HaTorah is one of the earliest we see of his period who say we should paskin like the Goinim. There's also a history that the Mizritche Maggid, that the Alter Rebbe travels with this Menorah HaTorah. He travels with him extensively for a fundraising mission, and so there are those who theorize that wasn't getan auf dem Weg. So we get the Torah versteht sich. Perhaps that was what part of the influence by the Alter Rebbe, because the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, he passes like Rabbeinu Tam, passes like the Geinim. So what shifted his perspective? All right, I'll call upon him. There's a significant Tam. He's telling us that in this union of brocho mein sheva, we should say even without a minyan kavua. That's al pi Arizal. And because this was relevant during COVID, although COVID was not a good raya, because unfortunately came minyanim kavuim, but it was part of the discussion. You have a minyan arai, you say brocho me'en sheva, and someone, I have here a couple of, one is from a safe Kaivetz Or Yisrael, Rabbi Oberlander, has a long article about this. And then there's a Kaivetz called Tiferes Shem, published by Koil in Crown Heights, and Rabbi Michael, I don't know, Abram, whatever, learner, whole thing, and he quotes that Rabbi Heller also would paskin to say brocho me'en sheva, even by the Sheva Brachas Shabbos, based upon, although it's not necessarily Minich Chabad, don't have clarity Minich Chabad about this, but we have ample poskim who say we should follow the Arizal and say brocho me'en sheva, even b'minyan arai. So you can see his name is Rebo Ziel Maslish, but later on you see how he is in the Hakadama here. They talk about how a tremendous relationship with Reb Melech Milizhens and the Baal HaFlor, and as I say, he passed away to Kuf Memvov. So he's obviously that much older than the Alter Rebbe. Yet, but they were contemporaries after all, and they do this. There's a journal like one of these Shabbatik, Alim Trufa, but a different one. I've forgotten what it is. Where I read that there was a whole journey talking about Shkia and going to Tam, and part of that discussion was how he and the Alter Rebbe traveled, and that's where I got this history from. Yeah, okay. If you have this for Kampot, if they serve, do you make a brocha? So I want to clarify this because there's a bit of confusion about this. So like this, here we have from the Alter Rebbe Siddur B'Chasanenin. This is paid case Halocho Yud. We've talked through various types of Mezonos. We've got Mezonos, which is not lechem at all. So the Moshel nuts are not lechem by any stretch because so you can have Kviyas Suda on donuts, like there's no question Kviyas Suda on pasta. If you have a mountain of pasta, it still remains ala michya. It doesn't become hamoitzi because it's not pas, not lechem. But then we've got level 3 types, which are lechem she'enei gomer, which means it's the type of it. It's a lechem. It's not lechem gomer. If you Kviyas Suda, it becomes hamoitzi. Okay. So one of those categories is one of 3 categories. One of those categories is Pasa Bobekistin. In Pasa Bobekistin, there are 3 shittas. One says Pasa Bobekistin Losh Koishasin Ma'at. You have a nibble, small amount, Pasa Bobekistin, therefore something made with fruit juice. That's one shitta. That bread made with fruit juice is Mezonos. There's a second shitta, Pasa Bobekistin Losh Kis. It's got a made like a pouch. And then we've got the shitta of Rav Haigor, mentioned recently, that he says it's kachin thin crackers. That's why the Sfardim make a brocha Mezonos on our machine matzahs, our hand matzahs, a whole year. But they have an upgrade. It becomes lechem gomer. A whole year it's lechem she'enei gomer. Ashkenazim, we make hamoitz the whole year, and I believe that's why the Alter Rebbe doesn't bring Rav Haigor in the Siddur. In this point, he brings him that there's the third shitta that crackers are Mezonos. Why doesn't he bring it? Because Ashkenazim started making thin matzahs, and this type of matzah you can't bring Rav Haigor because it's very confusing. But Moshe, something like breadsticks or pretzels. Pretzels are also just flour and water. Is a pretzel Mezonos? Rav Haigor, it's dakin. It's things like this. It's crackers. So the kind of that Al Capone, that's the Rav Haigor. So now we have 3 shittas. What's the Mezonos? So now you have biscuit. Why is the biscuit Mezonos? Why isn't it hamoitzi? Because it's made with margarine. Yeah. According to the shitta, the Pasa Bobekistin means dafka, a pouch filled with sweet stuff, not borekis made with potatoes. Yes, that doesn't help you because that's the kind of thing you have it to. But if you have a pastry filled with sweet stuff, that is Mezonos. That's Pasa Bobekistin. According to that shitta, biscuits are hamoitzi. and sponge cake is amoitzi. And just yesterday we were sitting by this very generous breakfast laid on by Ephraim, I believe, yes? So we're talking about the story of the Alter Rebbe with Rabbi Yomi Kletzke. And they were traveling, and Rabbi Yomi took out from his lunch bag, he took out some biscuits or something. And the Rebbe says to him, the Alter Rebbe says, as a Bal Nefesh, soll nicht essen solche Sachen, shelo b'techas sudeh. So he says, so the Alter Rebbe says to him, the Bal Nefesh, I wouldn't have taken you as my Akoponim. So this is coming back. So something like biscuits, something like sponge cake. According to the Shita of Pasa Babakistan means filled with sweets. So then biscuits are amitz. So now, or a pie crust. According to the Shita of Pasa Babakistan means a pouch filled with stuff. So a pie crust is amitz. Comes the end of the meal, you're now giving a pie crust or a biscuit or a sponge cake. Why make it amitzi? Sorry, why make it Mezonos? Already made hamoitzi. After it's hamoitzi, on its own, you make a Mezonos because you're making a halachic. But once you already have hamoitzi in place, so there's no point of making it's a brocho, a chashash brocho about Torah to make a brocho on the sponge cake. Yeah. So this is what the Alter Rebbe writes here. Chutz mipas haniloishe becholo. If you got a kind of you're serving as a dessert, because serving a bread which is made with fruits, with milk. You make a Mezonos on that kind of possible during a meal. There is a sheet here that this biscuit or this bridge roll is hamoitzi, or even a sponge cake is hamoitzi. So therefore, do you make a brocha on Mezonos served as dessert? And the answer is, if it's a strudel, which is a pastry filled with sweets, then sweets, I mean, there's raisins, whatever. If it's a pastry filled with stuff, then you make a Mezonos. But like a sponge cake, and even though it's got a cream cake is bietzim the same, it's a sponge cake. Navos, the marangulect, after the baking, they put in cream, nicht einmal, 7-mal. But it's a sponge cake. You want to make a shahakel on the cream, but so bichlal, I heard from Mishpachas Rav Pevsner, the Hillel of Shalom, that he didn't also Mezonos for dessert. Separately, on this Friday night, I said this over. So Geisha Vlander told me he had once a bar mitzvah or a Sheva Baruchas, and his mother was arranging the menu. Perhaps had a caterer, not a caterer. So Rav Moshe, Alav Shalom, he asked, "I want to see the menu." No, he wasn't usually, but he said, "What?" And there was for dessert. There was tea and cake. So he says, "Strudel should be strudel." So there was tea and strudel rather just tea and cake. So he said, "Rabbi Shaila for na bracha." Shaila is, should you not to have cake at all, because the other side is after this your Mezonos and you have to China. Yeah. The other side of it is that if sponge cake is Mezonos, so you're having your cream cake without bracha, because it's smonzach in a bracha. So mele upon him, upon the Deval Nefesh wird nicht essen the cream cake. The Seif Hasuda far invention. Okay. I feel about that. Fine. So here I got a question from someone, and she's standing in shul at Kesser, and she hears another lady, and she's asking, "Why are you saying V'diri Kotzucha? It's only for the Chazan." And the other lady says, "Bring me." So even Mele is hat man geschickt das alle Herzen. Do you say do the Yechidim, does the Tzibur say of Divri Kotzecha, despite the instruction in the Siddur where it says Chazan says it. Now, as you know, the Rebbe used for davening a Siddur Torah, And the Siddur Torah doesn't have the instructions. This kol, chazan v'kol, that whole shtickle are not in the Alter Rebbe's original Siddur. It's from the Vilna Siddur, from the precursor of the Tilas Hashem Siddur. It's called Seder Aveda, printed in Vilna, Tafresh Ayin Aleph, and it was copied over. But not because the Vilna Siddur, Tafresh Ayin Aleph, was recorded minig liter. It was a minig oilam. So when it says chazan, kol chazan, he's telling us of a particular minig of a particular community. Shaila is whether that's binding on us. So let's look carefully at. Someone says nakdishach. In English, let us let us exalt you. So it's the chaz who is kind of galvanizing that let us come together and sanctify Hashem. To which the tzibur respond, and they say Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. Then the chazan says Lu'umosam Meshabchim v'Yemrim, and the call he's prompting. The tzibur say Baruch Kved Hashem Imkayim. Then the chazan says, in addition to the Kaddish and Baruch, and he's prompting the tzibur. And they say Yimelech. So that's where it comes from. Dachzich across the has that everyone says Nakdishach. Even the in the literature, who don't say Lu'umosam, or what do you call it, and they do say Nakdishach, which is interesting. Although that's also just a chaz. But that was the minig liter. Huh? The Kaddish, sorry, yeah. Thank you. Right. In Siman Kuf Chav, it's helpful to remember the postcodes. Kuf Chav Daled is about Chazon Shat. Kuf Chav Hey is about Kedusha. So in Siman Kuf Chav Hey, the Alter Rebbe goes through an arichas about the different minhagim, about answering Kedusha. I'm going to read now the Alter Rebbe's lashon. Yesh noyakin kein am hayadu alehem afisha loy midoichak loy makol nusach hakdusha I shliach tzibur milo b'milo belachas. That they say the whole lot together with the chazan. B'tevas nakdishach v'naritzach v'kodesh kodesh kodesh b'kel. So we have here minigo Arizal to say Lu'umosam b'emrim quietly together with the chazan. This is anders for the minig pelisha. The pelisha minig is that they all say aloud. Lu'umosam b'shabchim b'emrim. They say aloud. That's not the minig Arizal. Minig Arizal is the chazan would say Lu'umosam aloud, and the tzibur, as men of the tzibur, would say along quietly. This you have at the bottom. We have here a quote from a sefer called Maaseh Melech, which is describing the minhagim of the Rebbe, tefillah, etc. So they write here that the Rebbe would also say Lu'umosam b'shabchim with the chazan. In other words, the Rebbe was noyeg k'minig Arizal to say those pieces quietly, so not to dismiss minig liter that they didn't say. The tzibur did not say Lu'umosam, didn't say Chanukah, and that's the way I was also brought up. And once I saw that the Rebbe was saying it, and it's based upon the Arizal, so then that's the answer. That if you want to follow the minig Arizal, then you could say quietly of divrei Chanukah together with the. Why does the chazan not say aloud, Ani Hashem Elokeichem? It's because it's rather presumptuous for someone to stand in front of the tzibur and to say aloud, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Slightly untrue. Okay, let's move on. Someone asked me about wearing gloves on Shabbos. So here we have in Siman Shin Aleph, arichas about this. And where there are those who say that you shouldn't wear gloves on Shabbos because you sometimes need to pick at something, you take up your gloves, then you might carry it. Then that's earlier. That is recommended. What's very interesting is that it be widespread that men don't wear gloves and women do. What's the chilik? Shabbos is binding on women as well as men. The only difference is that the men learned the shiur, the women probably haven't learned it in the shiur. But really, als frumkeit, there's no difference between men and women. And one is more machmir, won't wear gloves, and one's more maker wouldn't. Now, the Torah talks about, after the second paragraph, talks about a mit, where you'd have a roll where you both hands inside. He's talking about that. That's the second part, which is more lenient. And he says, are those who are machmir even with this? He finishes off. B'chol inyan means that b'chol inyan both with a mit or even with gloves. So the minhag olam is to be makel even with gloves, and the recommendation is to be machmir not. So if it's not extremely cold and you can manage to keep your hands in your pockets, so is royal hachmir. If it's such terrible cold, it's really so then okay. Yes, I'll milismach. That the ikar hadin is that you are allowed to. Apparently, it's just royal lachash to the midei hamachmira. Okay, we're sitting on Friday. I have my weekly slot to answer phones there. I was on Friday across the street in the Beis Hairoah. That's my show's Friday because I hope that Friday would be more busy. People have shilas, they have Shabbos. So one person called up and he said he had a drink of grape juice. And afterwards he said, Be'er nefoshes. Does he have to make a brocho again of alagefen, mein sholish? Told him he has to repeat it. But then afterwards I wanted to check whether I said the right thing. So I should have checked before. But yeah, I recently learned this halacha. This is in Perek Aleph, of Bechasanenin, where it says Al HaMichya doesn't cover for Be'er nefoshes. So Lamosha, if you had some porridge and some meat or fish, you're not included in Al HaMichya. You have them separately, obviously. And if you said Be'er nefoshes, is not covering for Mein Sholish. Therefore, if you had a grape juice and you have to say a brocha, Al HaGefen, and you said Be'er nefoshes, you're not Yotze, you got to repeat the brocha. The brocha, you have to go again and say the correct brocha. Right.
That would cover all the burning potter's drinks.
Yes, if you had grape juice or wine and you had lemonade and vodka and you make ala gefen, so they like bread is the king of all foods, and you bench for bread, it includes all other foods, even snacks, which you make a separate bracha for, even sweets. So the same thing, wine is like the melech of all drinks, and therefore it's included in the ala gefen. We have one last question, and that is about avocados from Eretz Yisrael, which we had this discussion recently, and I had brought up that the concern of Orla. Now, I did inquire. Someone asked me, where did I get this from? Because the London Bezdin or the Kaddish don't seem to be talking about the worry of Orla, and this is actually then going to be a worry not just in Asa Shmita, it's going to be every year. And so I reached out to someone called Rav Glitzenstein, who is a Rov in the agriculture area in Yudah Shomron, I believe, in Har Ephraim. So this is his main hashgoch is on agriculture. And so he did not confirm to me that there's a high concern of Orla in avocados. There's a whole question: how do you work with? How do you do statistics make a difference to decide whether you have to worry about Orla or not? The fact that you know that the 10% or 10%, how does that make a difference, la halacha, whether you have to be choshesh for Orla or not? That's the whole discussion on its own. But what he did tell me is that at the moment, it's irrelevant because of Shomur v'Ne'avod. And I was actually quite surprised. Shomur v'Ne'avod. So here's the question. You have a field. Let's say if someone did buy, not allowed to buy stuff from Eretz Yisrael, Shemitah stuff, because it's also b'schoira. So they shouldn't be selling it, you shouldn't be buying it. But we're talking about you bought it already, to eat it. So if something was cultivated in violation of Hilchos Shmita, Shomur, that the owner did not allow it, Hefker, so it's Shomur, so he violated it has to be hefker. V'ne'evod, or he cultivated, he watered it during Shemitah, which is not allowed to. Does his violation of Shomer v'ne'evod make the fruit of Shemitah osur b'achil? Because Shemitah, people ask Shemitah is meant to eat. Shemitah is it's not Shemitah food is you got sfichin, but otherwise Shemitah is to la'achila, la'ochlo, and yet there is a shita that Shomer v'ne'evod does. You saw also the notices from the Kadasya, he put on about avoiding using fruit from Eretz Yisrael because of Shomer v'ne'evod. I was surprised. I looked into it and it's basically like this. I was influenced by Limud Rambam, both of the Rambam in Sefer Hayit and in Pirsha Mishnayos. He takes the view that Shomer v'ne'evod is takenish b'seder. It didn't make the fruit osur. But there are Ravid and other Rishonim who take the view that Shomer v'ne'evod is osur. So here we have a dilemma. We're talking about Shemitah Bizman Hazeh is Drabbana. Shomer v'ne'evod, the chayre is a knas. If it is, it's a chayre. It's a sveka Drabbana l'kula. What men l'chayre gedaf mekel sein. Lepoil in contemporary Sforim of Shemitah, I'm seeing some Sforim say Shomer v'ne'evod, keep away from it, and that's what Rav Glitzenstein told me. Shomer v'ne'evod, you need to say them. Others disagree. And they say Shomer v'ne'evod, all right, but it doesn't make it awesome. So therefore, that's the background why they are telling us not to indulge in Shomer v'ne'evod, but whoever wants to rely on the lenient view, the Shittas Rambam, Shomer v'ne'evod is muter. As they say, it's rabban l'kula. Yeshal mal lismech. Okay, I'll stop at this and wish you a very good day. Veilig Chanukah, veilig Tomid, and we should be zeicher to see Oiris Shel Tzion with the Menorah in Sefer Menorah HaTorah. We should see the Sefer Menorah. We should see the with Aaron HaKohen. Beis Hamikdash Meher V'Yameinu Mamash.
Amen. Yashikoyach. Veilig Chanukah.
Don't have Mezonos in the meal.